Well, good evening, everyone. I feel that it's better I stand up because I want to be able to look at the faces. It inspires me and also warns me. For example, if people are falling asleep or, making faces, then I know that I am going in the wrong direction. So I always have to have the opportunity to look at the faces and being inspired. And I have to look at these faces. So allow me to move a little bit and go like this. In reflecting about the topic today, about love, its origins, and its impacts in our lives and in our roles, certain thoughts came to my mind. Because love is very, very confusing issue. I have been reflecting on this and writing for about 50 years and still struggling with the concept. The reason is that love is a condition that everybody is seeking. We all are seeking love. We all want to be loved. We all want to love. This is universal. Everywhere you go, this is the situation. And then everywhere that you go, you will see that people lamenting that their love life, their love relationships, their state of love is unsatisfactory. You seldom find people who say that they really are in a very satisfactory and complete and unconflicted love relationship. And these two combinations makes it necessary for us to think about the phenomena of love more deeply and to see what it is all about and why this is the situation with love. And of course, the third problem arises when you ask people what they mean by love. For example, in this room, if we were going to ask, what is your definition of love? And you were going to write it, it would be very interesting to see what you write. And you will see that we will come up with many, many different definitions of love. And also different kinds of love that we experience in life. So, there are, broadly speaking, two schools of thought about love. One school of thought considers love to be basically a biological condition with psychological and social expressions and physical expressions. In other words, it sees love as being the result of chemical changes in human body in general and human brain in particular, which gives us certain sensations and feelings and in the general media they always talk about it, the way that people smell or the way this or that or the look, and the whole phenomena of love is viewed as being basically the outcome of physical condition of human beings. And then it expresses itself in psychological feelings and social relationships. So they see everything, love, feelings, and relationships, to be all materialistic in nature. Okay, that's one group of ideas, and they're all very, very powerful, very common, because in our times we live basically a materialistic life, and we have materialistic orientations, and these ideas have become increasingly common in the world. And because of that, the greatest emphasis on love is with respect to pleasure, to enjoyment, to gratification, sexual gratification, food gratification, clothes, shoes, cars, doesn't matter what. They are all expressions, as far as people are concerned, expressions of love. And if you're a millionaire or billionaire, then, diamonds and all kind of things. For example, this ring that has been made totally of diamonds, you have seen it on television, is $64 million. And, somebody is going to buy it and give it as an expression of love to somebody. And you will love them and say, oh, I love you so much, of course. Why not? $64 million, that's, it's worth it. So, so that's one way that love has evolved, and as a result, love has lost its sacred dimension. Because in older times, love was a sacred phenomenon, and now it has become a secular phenomenon. Okay? Now, the other school of thought continues to consider love as a sacred, divine phenomenon that has biological, psychological, and social, relational expressions. In other words, it considers the source of love to be something divine, something spiritual. And this something spiritual and divine in human reality then affects the body to have certain experiences, and our psychological conditions be affected in certain ways, and our relationships be affected likewise. So these are the two ways of looking at the phenomena of love. Now, in the Baha'i faith, when we go and look at the Baha'i faith, we find a very interesting approach to the issue of love. But before we do that, before we talk about the Baha'i faith, let's see what other people have said about love. And I read you few statements of different people about love. It just give us a feeling of what people think. For example, Shakespeare asks, whoever loved that loved not at first sight. Okay? And he concludes, to be wise and love exceeds man's might. To be wise and love exceeds man's, human being's might. In other words, it's impossible to be wise and to be in love. Which, of course, as we know, in love relationships between people fall in love, right? We all fall in love. And love is blind. Okay? and we don't have a control over it, you see. So in the passionate interpersonal love relationship, love is mightier than wisdom. And human beings therefore lose their rationality to the forces of love. Okay. Einstein, invoking the laws of physics, assures us that gravitation cannot be held responsible for people falling in love. This is the exact quote from him, okay? He says, gravitation cannot be held responsible for people falling in love, okay? Now that's very interesting, because from a philosophical perspective, gravitation is the physical counterpart of love in human beings. What does love do in human beings? It brings people close to each other, attracts people to each other, connects people to each other, right? In marriages, in families, parents, children, communities of people, and so forth. The people gravitate toward each other through the force of love. And therefore, and in the nature, there is a force of gravity that brings things together and keeps them together, right? Everything that exists is connected to each other through the force of gravitation, okay? The galaxies and the atom and subatomic particles, all of them are connected to each other, okay? And therefore, gravitation is the counterpart of phenomena of love in human relationships. And here, that's why Einstein says gravitation cannot be held responsible for people falling in love. So that's because falling in love has all kind of problems with it. Gravitation doesn't. Okay. So Einstein wanted to say, it's not my fault. Okay. It's not my fault. Okay. Mozart is speaking of genius, because Mozart was a genius himself, so he spoke of genius. He observed that neither a lofty degree of intelligence, nor imagination, nor both together go to the making of genius. Love, love, love. That is the soul of genius. Isn't that beautiful? He says, neither a lofty degree of intelligence, nor imagination, nor both together go to the making of love. Genius. Love, love, love. That is the soul of genius. So all of you who are wanting to be genius, love, love, love. Okay? Remember that. Freud, being Freud, he warns us about love. He warns us. He says, one is very crazy when in love. One is very crazy when in love. And he says that it is always possible to bind together a considerable number of people in love, so long as there are other people left over to receive the manifestations of their aggression. Now, this is very interesting, because Freud believes that it is impossible to love without aggression, without anger, without some degree of violence. He feels that love and aggression are together. Always are together. So he says, yes, it is possible to have a group of people who love each other as long as there is another group that they can hate. Okay, so we connect together against another group. And this is, of course, the phenomenon we see in the world today. And when you look at the world today, you will see that the world is divided in groups who say we love each other and hate the others, and they are at war with others, and religions, nationalities, races, men and women, you name it. It is that phenomenon.
So is that the foundations of solidarity? So is that like the concept of solidarity?
Solidarity, group solidarity, yes. This from Freudian perspective, the notion of solidarity is that you have to have always an enemy. Okay, you have to have somebody that you can have your aggression, against them, because he believes that human beings by nature are aggressive. Okay. That's Freud, of course, has proven to be wrong, but nevertheless, the phenomena that he describes is something that we observe in the world, and we have to try to understand why is that way. Okay. Then Martin Luther King stresses that mankind must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. So Martin Luther King comes exactly to deal with the phenomena that Freud has talked about, aggression, and says the only way that you can find a method that fights with aggression, with violence in the world, is a method based on love. But he doesn't go about to describe how to do it, what the method is, and so forth, but at least he describes it at that level. And Confucius, now that we have gone around the world, is a good idea to see what Confucius says. Confucius is very practical, like all Chinese are, right? He says, choose a job you love, and you will never have to work a day in your life.
That's nice.
Yeah? Yeah. All right. Choose a job you love, and you never have to work a day in your life. Okay. So these are some of the reflections and statements that have been made about love in everyday activities, everyday life. And I think in this respect it's a good idea to read, for me to read a statement by Abdul Baha, which also deals with everyday life, okay, so that we see how in the Baha'i perspective we deal with this issue. Abdul Baha at that time was in Paris, October 1912. He was in Paris. And he was giving a talk, and in that group there was a person who stood up and said, my aim in life is to transmit as far as is in my power the message of Krishna to the world. This person stood up and said that. Okay? And here was Abdul Baha answered to this gentleman's statement. He said, the message of Krishna is the message of love. Now, isn't that interesting? You see, here is very interesting phenomena. Abdul Baha is talking, of course, everybody knows that he is a Baha'i, okay? And another person gets up and in essence says, I'm not going to listen to you, Abdul Baha. I'm going to go and promote the teachings of Krishna. Okay, so it's a kind of an antagonistic comment to be made in that gathering. Okay, so what Abdul Baha does, immediately turns it around and puts it in the context of love. Okay, he says the message of Krishna is the message of love, and then he says all God's prophets have brought the message of love. Then he includes everybody. So you see how here the circle of love suddenly becomes universal. Not a small circle, Krishna or Baha'i or Christian, all prophets. And then he said, none has ever taught that war and hate are good. Everyone agrees in saying that love and kindness are best. And then Abdul Baha goes on, love must manifest in its reality in deeds, not only in words. These alone are not without effect. Words alone do not have an effect. In order that love may manifest its power, there must be an object, an instrument, a motive. Now, this is a fundamental issue. The nature of love is determined by the object of your love. Okay? That's the reason that love is expressed differently when you have different objects. Okay? For example, the love of a man and a woman who are married, okay, is expressed differently than the love of a parent and a child. And differently, the love of the friends. And differently, the love of a teacher and a student, right? All of them are expressions of love, but because the object of love is different, then the expression of love, the type of love that is expressed, is different. Now, the object of love can be sublime and could be ridiculous. In other words, somebody can say, I love chewing gum. Okay? Or somebody can say, I love humanity. Somebody can say, I love war. Okay? Or I love only my people. Or I love only this or that. So, the nature of love, the quality of love is dependent on the object of love. What is it that you are loving? And when you decide on that, then the nature of love and the scope of love and the depth of love is going to express itself. Okay. The second issue that Abdul Baha brings up here, he says that not only the object of love affects the nature of love, but the motive that you have. Why you are loving somebody. For example, if a person thinks that I better love this person because he is rich, or better love this person because he is powerful, or better love this person for whatever reason, I am going to get a benefit from it. Okay? Then love becomes a commodity. It's not a phenomenon that is independent from the motive that you have. Many people express love without pure motive. Many relationships break up because at the beginning of the relationship, the two that are in love, they say all kind of expressions of love in order to connect the other person with themselves, with the motivation of getting what they want to get. And when they got what they want to, then the love comes to an end. That's the reason that we see so many temporary love relationships in the world, because the motive usually is self-centered. What am I going to get out of it? It's not, I love this person because of the qualities of that person, but I love that person because that person makes me happy, or makes me this, or makes me that, or gives me this, or gives me that. So the motive that we have, not only the object of love that you choose, the motivation that is behind the expression of love also is going to determine the nature of love. And of course, is the instruments that we use to express love. How do we express our love? Many people express their love through material gifts, giving things, giving. That's one kind of expression of love. But how many times we have heard people saying, but this person only doesn't spend time with me, that is not interested in what I do, is not interested in my thoughts and this and that, is only interested, in the only way that he or she expresses love is by giving me gifts, or giving me things and so forth. So the instrument that you use, the object of love that you have, and the motivation that is there, all of them affect the type of love that is in human relationships. So the more we talk about it, the more it becomes clear that love is a very complex phenomenon. Now let's reflect for a moment on our own experience of love. And as you do that, you will notice that the whole notion of love comes naturally to us. In other words, nobody needs to tell us that we want to love and we want to be loved, that we need love. We know it. We know it. Intrinsically, we know it. Within our very being, we know it. And the reason for this is because love is connected to the human consciousness. You see, you cannot be in love and not to be conscious of being in love. You see, love requires consciousness, it requires awareness. You have to know that you love. Okay? You can say, well, I didn't know that I was in love. Well, if you didn't know, then you were not, you see. So love is always a conscious phenomenon. And consciousness is the quality of human soul. And it is here that in the notion of love having a divine origin comes. The idea is that we human beings, by virtue of the fact that we are conscious beings, and by virtue of the fact that consciousness is the characteristic of human psyche or human soul, because of that, love by itself is a spiritual characteristic of being human. Okay? Actually, there are three things that are inviolable characteristics of being human, because they are powers of human consciousness. One is to love, the other one is to know, and the third one is to choose. We do that in everyday life. Everything that we do is based on certain level of understanding, certain level of attraction and desire and love to do something, motivation, and a choice that we make. Everything that we do are expressions of the functions of the human soul. So, as we reflect on these, then we can now begin to address of what is the origin of love. And in order to understand that, we should go back to the spiritual teachers of humanity, which are the founders of religions, and to see what they say. And I would share with you some statements from Baha'i writings, because here we are talking about the Baha'i concept of origins of love and its role in human life. So, one of the most interesting statements in the Baha'i writings is a statement by Baha'u'llah in which he says, I knew, this is talking from God. God is speaking to humanity. I knew of my love for thee, therefore I created thee. Okay? Now, this is very interesting statement. I knew, knowledge, my love for thee, love, therefore I created thee. The choice of creation and action, right? The three powers of human soul. Knowledge, love, and will. So, our existence is because of expression of love of God for us. That's the origins of love. The origin of love is that God knew of His love for us and He created us. And in doing so, therefore, He establishes a relationship. Now we have a relationship with God. And we have to see how we are going to reciprocate this relationship. And in the writings of the Baha'i Faith, we come constantly across statements like this, that it talks about the relationship of human beings with God. For example, Baha'u'llah says, love me that I may love thee. If thou lovest me not, in no wise my love can reach thee. Okay? Now that's very interesting. Because here we are talking about the developmental stages of love. You see, love is expressed differently at different stages of development. For example, a child expresses love in what way? The child expresses love by receiving our love. We take care of the child, we feed the child, we stay awake for the child, we do all of the things that we do. And when the child responds, accepts our care, and gives us a hug, right? Then we feel that the child is loving us back. The love of child is a one-directional love. We give love, and the child receives. We give love and child receives. And in history of religion, it has been also the same way, that as humanity has been growing up and has been in earlier stages of its childhood, the way that religions have been described has been God's, read in different holy books, instead that God says, I give you this and this and that and that, and all you have to do is to obey, is to receive. Okay? And if you receive, you're in good shape. Okay? It's like a parent and a child relationship. Now, humanity is living at the time of its collective adolescence. And adolescent love is a chaotic love. Is passionate and is changing, constantly changes. So adolescents, when they love, one day they love each other, the other day they hate each other, right? They love and hate. And the object of love constantly changes. They are in love with this, they are in love with that, they are in love with that, we are in love with everything, we are in love with nothing. This is the nature of chaos of adolescence. And humanity now collectively is in age of adolescence. And that's why there is so much chaos in the world today. So much chaos. Okay? Because in the world today, the adolescent humanity doesn't know how to choose an appropriate object of love. So the objects of love are very scattered, it's confusing right now. And the motivation for love is not, the motive that is there is not clear. And the instruments chosen for showing love are all confusing. So this is one of the reasons that in our world, in this time in history, we have such problems with expression of love in all areas of our life. Because we are in that age of transition. But when we mature and we grow and we go to a higher level of relationship, then love becomes give and take. We love, and because we love, we will be loved back. Okay? It becomes a mutual process of giving love and being able to receive love. There are many people who give, but they cannot receive. Have you had experience with those people? They create enormous guilt in you and anger. They create guilt and anger. They make you feel guilty because after suddenly they say, I did so much for my children or something, and look what they are doing now. Okay? Nobody appreciates. You hear that, which creates guilt. Or you try to do something and the person doesn't accept it, and you feel angry that the person doesn't accept your giving of love. These are expressions of earlier stages of love. A mature stage of love is the capacity to give love and to receive love. And both of these require a mature personhood. We have to evolve as individuals and become more whole as individuals. People who have doubt about their identity of who they are, they have tremendous difficulty to accept love or to give love, especially accept love. And also, people who have doubts about their identity, their love invariably is mixed with aggression. So love and aggression go together in stages when the person has doubts about his own or her own nobility, lovability, and so forth, you see. Because many people don't feel lovable. They feel doubtful about their own lovability. They are not sure whether they are worthy of being loved. You see. So this process of evolving and maturing is so fundamental for development of a mature love, which of course means that we have to develop self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is a very difficult thing, because self-knowledge is a painful process. Where as we look at ourselves, we constantly discover all kinds of things that we wish we didn't know. Okay? Usually we don't say, I wish I didn't have those things. We say, I wish I didn't know, I wish I didn't think about it. So what we do, we go and drink, we take drugs, we busy ourselves with all kind of activities to forget not to go the path of self-knowledge. Because self-knowledge is a painful journey, but is an essential journey for love. Okay? Because in our life process, we search for the object of love. Then we fall in love. And when we fall in love, we have to get to know the object of our love. Okay? Because if we don't know the object of our love, we wouldn't be able to create the next stage of development. You know, there is a book by Baha'u'llah in which is called Seven Valleys. And in the Seven Valleys, he is describing the journey of human soul, human beings, from material, biological beings on the process of ascendance to ever higher levels of spirituality, sacredness. Okay. So the first valley is the valley of search. We are constantly searching, looking. Then the next valley is the valley of love. We fall in love. We find something, we find somebody, we find God, and we fall in love. And when you fall in love, you have to do something very fundamental. When you fall in love, you have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice your ego. You have to sacrifice your selfishness. You have to sacrifice your self-centeredness. You have to sacrifice your self-comfort. It's not easy to love another human being. So you have to sacrifice. And when you sacrifice, you experience pain. And that's why Baha'u'llah says the steed of value of love is pain. Love and pain are together. But this is the pain of sacrifice. It's a pain of letting go of your hidden agendas, of your motivations, of all kinds of things, and becoming gradually more and more pure in the love relationship. But in order to help this love to evolve, you have to go to the next stage. And the next stage is the stage of knowledge. Now, what is it that you begin to know? You have to know yourself, and you have to know the other. And when you focus on that, the process of self-knowledge becomes the primary goal, because the ultimate level of self-knowledge and knowledge of the other, these two together, is the next valley, which is what? Valley of unity. You cannot create unity with the object of your love unless you develop a certain degree of self-knowledge and knowledge of the other person. You have to get to know the other person. You see, at the beginning of love relationship, you love the other person blindly. You really don't know that person. You are hoping that that person has certain qualities that you think he or she has. Okay? But then, as you establish this relationship, love relationship, then you have to begin to go through the path of self-discovery, first of all, because whenever you fall in love, you realize that the beloved puts a lot of demand on you. Okay, love doesn't come free. They put a lot of demands on you. You have to change your habits. You have to share your bed. You have to, you have to do all kind of things that before you were free and you didn't need to do it. But suddenly this person has come to your life and is putting all of these demands on you. And you have to therefore be willing to let go of a lot of the comfort and all of those things that you had at the level of being single. Okay? Now you're connected. And this level then becomes very conflicted, the process of self-knowledge. Because you have to get to know yourself better and you have to get to know the other person better. And you have to fall in love again. And you have to fall in love again with the qualities of that person that you discover in the relationship. Okay? And that's the reason that many marriages that break up is because people, before they get married, they really try very hard to make themselves lovable. But as soon as they get married, just forget about it. You say, you have to love me the way I am. Why should I love you the way you are? You made yourself lovable. You have to continue to make yourself lovable. And I have to make you cannot love somebody that doesn't try to make himself or herself lovable. Okay? So this whole process of giving up, you say, okay, I have done it now, I tricked the person, they got married, and that's the motive process, the motive dimension. We have to move on, and we have to get to know ourselves, we have to get the other, and we have to fall in love constantly with the new positive qualities of the other person that we discover, and the sacrifices that we do for each other, and the pain that we go together. And as we do, and as the level of our knowledge of each other increases, and knowledge of ourselves increases, self-knowledge, then we enter the next level, which is level of unity. You see, the fruit of the tree of love is unity. Okay? The fruit of the tree of love is unity. In other words, a love relationship is not a relationship free from difficulty. All relationships are difficult. Okay? Even relationship with ourselves is difficult. Okay? Let alone relationship with other people. How much difficulty you have with yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror and say, oh my God, okay? It's difficult, okay? So, relationships are difficult, okay? So, the sign of a strong relationship, a strong love is unity. Meaning, in spite of the difficulties, the pain, the sacrifice, the demands, we are united. We stay together. We continue that process. And that relationship then would takes us the other stages of maturation and development and also the next 3 stages of the 7 valleys. Now, in the writings of Baha'i faith, we discover that in order for people to be able to establish meaningful, lasting, unifying relationships, they have to have a mutual object of love. And the higher that mutual object of love is, the greater that mutual love is, the purer that object is, the higher, the purer, the greater the extent of your love is. And the highest of all, of course, is God. Because God is the source of all good, the source of all beauty, the source of all mercy, the source of all knowledge, the source of all that is good. And therefore, if we establish a loving relationship with God and make our lives God-centered rather than self-centered, rather than people-centered, rather than money-centered, rather than whatever-centered, when you make your life God-centered, then that impacts all other relationships that you have. Now, humanity is now totally the opposite of being God-centered. The whole notion of being God-centered has disappeared from the agenda of humanity. Religion is not looked upon very positively. The notion of God is a difficult notion for many people. And the idea of being God-centered is very misunderstood because people think God-centeredness means that you have to be like a priest or an ayatollah or mullah or somebody like that, which is of course awful. You know, who wants to be a priest or this or that? That's not the idea. The God-centeredness has to have expression in everyday life, in what we do, in realities of life. You cannot go to a monastery or to a cave or someplace like that and say, I'm living a God-centered life. That's not a God-centered life. That's a self-centered life. The God-centered life has to take place in the domain of life of humanity. Okay? Those who isolate themselves in order to become God-centered, they are not involved in this spiritual battle. Okay? So it's a very interesting. Let me continue what Abdul said to that Krishna person, which is very interesting, because he continued to talk about the whole notion. You remember he said, in order that love may manifest its power, there must be an object, an instrument, and a motive. Okay? Then he says, there are many ways of expressing the love principles. There is a love for the family, for the country, for the race. There is political enthusiasm. There is also the love of community of interest in service. These are all ways and means of showing the power of love. We must find a way of spreading love among sons of humanity. Love is unlimited, boundless, infinite. Material things are limited, circumscribed, finite. You cannot adequately express infinite love by limited means. The perfect love, here we are, all of us perfect lovers, the perfect love needs an unselfish instrument, absolutely freed from the fetters of every kind. The love of family is limited. The tie of blood relationship is not the strongest bond. Frequently, members of the same family disagree and even hate each other. Patriotic love is finite. The love of one's country is causing hatred of all others, is not perfect love. Compatriots also are not free from quarrels amongst themselves. Think of Syria right now. Okay. The love of race is limited. There is some union here, but there is insufficient love. Love must be free from boundaries. To love our own race may mean hatred of all others. And even people of the same race often dislike each other. Political love also is much bound up with hatred of one party for another. This love is very limited and uncertain. The love of community, of interest in service is likewise fluctuating. Frequently, competitions arise, which lead to jealousy, and at length hatred replaces love. All these ties of love are imperfect. It is clear that limited material ties are insufficient to adequately express the universal love. The great unselfish love for humanity is bounded by none of these imperfect, semi-selfish bonds. This is the one perfect love possible to all mankind and can only be achieved by the power of divine spirit. No worldly power can accomplish the universal love. Abdu'l-Baha concluded his talk with the counsel, love one another. Okay. That was in Paris, 1912. The world still is the same way, even worse. Right? The whole notion is that if we want to develop a universal love, we have to have a transcendent, universal object of love. And through that transcendent, universal object of love, we will automatically get closer to others. We will become universal. We become all-encompassing. We will become all-accepting. Our love then takes a totally different expression. Now, there's much more to talk about love. And I think we have been sitting here for a long time. You know, earlier today, I started reading this book, Unity, the Creative Foundation of Peace. Unity of Faith and Reason in Action. And I was surprised of what was in the book. It reminded me of a statement. The statement says that behind or beside every successful man is a surprised woman. Yeah, I'm sure you have heard that, okay? Behind every successful man is a surprised woman. And that I realized that behind every relatively good book is a surprise author. Because I opened it and started reading it, and I was surprised of the things that I saw in the book. about love. And I said, oh, that's a good one. But I was surprised. But anyway, speaking of divine love and the love that we have, let me conclude with a personal reminiscence. As you know, the Baha'i community in Iran, since early 1980s, since 1980, and just a year before that, 1979, has been in a tremendous crisis since the revolution began. And the Baha'is became the object of persecution of a profoundest level. And many of my friends and colleagues and elders that I knew when I was living in Iran have been killed. And many of them now are in jail and in prisons. And now, one of the people that I knew was, I was living at that time in Shiraz during my first year of medical school. And the chairman of the spiritual assembly of the Baha'is of Shiraz was really a remarkable person by the name of Yadullah Wahdat. And he was actually an army man, but he was retired at that time. And he was a extremely kind and loving and funny and marvelous person, and somebody that you really like to know, and you learn a lot from them and so forth. So he was taken to prison, and he was killed after a short period of imprisonment. And before he died, he wrote a number of letters, and in one of the letters he wrote a poem for his family. And in the poem he says, "The fire of love is alive." You're talking about the divine love, the love that is connected to the divine, God-centered love. He says, "The fire of love is alive, even when death arrives. It is a lamp carried from this house to the other. The fire of love is alive, even when death arrives. It is a lamp carried from this house to the other." Which is very interesting. The whole notion of when you go place to place and person to person in love, you are carrying light with you. You bring light to wherever you go. And not only you bring light to the other place, you also find your way, because it's a lamp, it's a light. Love opens the doors to you. If you are a loving person, doesn't matter where you go, doesn't matter who you see, doesn't matter whether you know the language or you don't know language, doesn't matter anything. Somehow that love opens the doors to you. And I'm sure you have, many of you have had experience of that kind. And it's the most exciting thing, because out of a blue, the door opens. and you see things that you otherwise wouldn't. All right, I think is enough. If you want to read, there's much more in this book and also in The Psychology of Spirituality. In those two books, I have written a lot about the concept of love, and you can find it. Thank you. Any questions? Questions, comments? Yes.
What are the other three valleys after the Valley of Unity?
Okay, let me see. What are the other valleys? Then after unity is the valley of wonderment. Wonderment. Wonderment means that you begin to realize how absolutely magnificent this whole creation is. You wonder at everything. You wonder at all that there is. You become a lover at a higher level. And what's the next one? Is the valley of the last valley is the valley of utter nothingness. Okay, meaning that you just simply become selfless. You let go of your ego. Okay, you know, and the valley before that is valley of contentment, in which you become contented rather than being in fight with life processes. You know, life constantly brings unexpected things in your way. Constantly. Things happens that say, why God did that, okay? Like tsunami, like, disease, like a child being born of different kind that you expected. God knows what. All kind of things happens in life. And we have to learn that in everything that happens, there is a wisdom. There is a reason. We have to have that degree of assurance in the fundamental mercy and kindness of God. We are not alone. God never leaves us alone. God never does any unkind thing to us. And God is not in business of punishment. We are in business of punishment. God doesn't punish. Punishment comes with the action. Punishment is a very natural process. Okay? And as soon as the action, if I am engaged in an action that is destructive, the distraction that comes with it is the punishment. It's not God says, okay, I now punish you. It just comes with it, it comes with it, So these are the stages of evolution of human soul and human person, and evolving, going from stage to stage to stage. So when we reach to the final stage of utter nothingness, simply means, at one level, simply means that you become a selfless, not egoistic, and a universal person. Okay? Capable of a universal love, of unconditional love. And not only capable, doing it, putting it into action. That universal love doesn't mean that you go the whole universe. It means that in our everyday life, the way we respond and relate to other people is through the prism of love rather than anything else. Does that answer your question?
had a thought when you mentioned sacrifice.
Yes.
That brings pain. But for me, like if a mother truly loves a child and sacrifice a lot for the child, it's a selfless act and you don't see it as a pain. Like when the Baha'is give their life
right.
for the love of God.
Yeah.
Like they don't see their sacrifice as a pain.
It's a good pain.
Okay.
It's a good pain. Yeah, it's a good pain. You see, you have a good pain and a bad pain. Okay? For example, I'll give you a very ordinary example. Okay? When you exercise, you have pain in your muscles, but that's good pain. When you don't exercise, you have pain also. That's a bad pain. So you see, so that's the nature of it, okay? You're absolutely right. It's a good pain. It is a pain, but it's a good pain. Not sleeping is having a sleepless night. But because you love the child, you feel good about it, okay? But if you have a neighbor that is making all kind of noise and doesn't let you to sleep, is a different kind of a sleeplessness. Yeah.
I was just wondering if it would be fair to use the umbrella term of heuristics to describe the three powers of the soul.
Elaborate a little bit more.
So, as far as I understand, heuristics is often described as things you do intuitively. So, whether it's a rule of thumb or you have to make a decision, you don't really have time to calculate it rationally. So you kind of go with your gut. If anyone has a better definition.
No, that's good.
So I'm thinking, when you were talking about how love is an intuitive thing we interact with using the three powers of the soul. You don't need to be taught how to love. So it's like so that's kind of how I got that idea.
No, you see, we need to be taught how to love. We teach ourselves and we are taught by others. But knowledge, there are different types of knowledge. They are kind of formal learning processes and scientific processes, but there is also knowledge that comes through inspiration, knowledge that comes through intuition, knowledge that comes through mysterious ways that you even are not aware of how you got that, but you are inspired and you get it, you see. So not all knowledge is that kind of a open scientific knowledge that we are talking about. And that's one of the problems of our time, that we are doubtful of other types of knowledge, you see. But, we were talking about Mozart earlier, and somebody asked Mozart, how do you write your music? He says, well, the angels sing it to me and I write them down. Okay? Now that's a different knowledge. You cannot go to any university, even University of Victoria, to have angels singing it to you, okay? That's a different knowledge. And also, in the Bahá'í writings, for example, we read that the souls that leave this world, when they go to the next world, they continue to have connection with this life. And they become the source of inspiration for development of arts and sciences in this life. Okay? I remember one time I was preparing, I had been asked to go to hold a workshop on consultation for a group of educators from around the world. It was an international conference, not Baha'i conference. But they had heard about the notion of Baha'i consultation. And they wrote and said, would you give a talk on concept of consultation without Baha'i dimension, just concept of consultation, and hold a workshop for people who are, some may be Baha'is and some not Baha'is, but a workshop on consultation. So I began to think and think and think for about 2-3 months. How am I going to do that? Because I couldn't find anywhere anybody had written on how to hold workshops on consultation for a group of educators from around the world in a universal manner rather than in a specific framework of the Baha'i concepts. And at that time, just before going to Leningrad, it was in Leningrad at that time, I decided to go to Haifa, to Baha'i shrines, and have a visit. So I was walking in beautiful gardens of Shrine of Baha'u'llah, and I was thinking and thinking and thinking, and suddenly the idea came to my mind of how I'm going to do it. Okay? It came totally out of the blue. I had no idea how I can, And I said, I got it. And immediately I changed myself and said, they got me. Somebody up there got me, okay? And gave me the inspiration. So yes, I think that when we take knowledge in its broadest framework, then it involves all types of knowing that they are not formal in that sense. Did I address your?
Yeah.
Yeah.